Hello, this is my response to the natural disasters presentation. I guess I'm just going to start out by talking about the pretest. For the majority, I got most of them right. The one that surprised me was the first one that, on average, true or false, on average, 15 hurricanes hit the U.S. coastline every 3 years. I put true because it seemed like we've just been getting them like crazy lately, but it's actually only 5 hurricanes every 3 years, so that was kind of surprising for me. Um, and the other one was that about the lightning strikes. I guess 5 to 10% seemed like a pretty close number, but apparently it's 10 to 20%, so that was kind of surprising. The video about the hurricanes forming, I guess that's not really something I think about too often because living in Michigan, don't really have to worry about hurricanes. So it was kind of interesting to learn how they form and what season they're in, and especially talking about climate change. The point that stood out to me was with the climate getting warmer, will the season expand? Right now it's June to November, which is a pretty large amount of time already, so it's kind of scary that as our climate gets warmer, that season could expand, which definitely won't be good for our states that are impacted by hurricanes. Another thing was the immediate versus late effects of hurricanes on our public health. I think a lot of us think about the immediate ones, the flooding, how it's unsafe shelter conditions, we don't have food or water available because, you get taken out of your home, everything's basically destroyed around you, so these resources aren't available. But I think we tend to forget about the late effects, and like we think since we're not affected, I think that we sometimes just kind of forget about it. Like people are still suffering from Hurricane Katrina, and we just don't really hear about it anymore. So the late effects are toxic substances, mold that can be deadly, the rise in disease-carrying mosquitoes. I just think that those are things that we don't really think about. Another point that was interesting to me was the fact that floods kill more people in the United States than tornadoes, hurricanes, lightning, and I know I learned in some of my emergency management classes that floods are the most common natural disaster, but I guess it was kind of surprising that they killed most people because, like you said, normally when you think of natural disasters, you think of the tornadoes, you think of the hurricanes, you don't think of the flooding. So, the one time, out of all of these natural disasters, I guess I haven't really experienced any. I mean, the closest thing I can say is a tornado, which barely happened. Maybe some wind, but a tree knocked down in my yard. But I'm kind of thankful we live in Michigan for that point. I remember in 2017 in late June we had some major flooding. A couple of our bridges were closed. That's when Midland was like severely flooded. I think that's really the one thing that I've experienced. For the wildfires, I really like that point because that was really recent, and Australia really went through a lot with that. I thought it was cool how on one of the videos it showed the fires on the radar that they would show up on there. I think it's crazy that they can see that on the radar just from the heat coming off and the smoke. I also thought it was cool that they showed the picture where it showed Europe compared to Australia and which areas burnt in the smoke. And I think it's crazy, like even when there's a fire in California, we experience the haze all the way over here in Michigan. So I think we can kind of relate in that way to show how bad the smoke is and how it affects so many areas. The health effects that the smoke has, the one video said that there's an increase in respiratory problems, heart disease, diabetes, strokes, neurological diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. I think that's crazy. I would not have imagined that smoke would affect your body that much. And I thought it was also very sad the effect that it had on all the animals. They said 500 million animals dead, but then they updated within their video that they said 1 billion animals had died within the Australian fires. So I think we tend to just think about the humans, but we're not the only ones on this earth. So the animals, that made me very sad to hear that. And then there was the tornadoes. I thought it was cool, well, not cool, but I didn't realize that they're more common in the United States than any other country, which I guess that's kind of true. We never really hear about tornadoes being devastating in other countries. I guess that I didn't really realize it until I read that statistic. And with the Tennessee tornadoes, like it was stated, it's crazy how we didn't really hear much about it because that was the beginning of the whole coronavirus outbreak. And I was actually in Florida when this happened, and I had a friend who was in Nashville, and they were sitting in a bar, and they could hear the sirens going off, and they basically didn't really tell them what to do. They just kind of said, don't worry about it. I think it's because, like I said, like the people in the video said, there really aren't that many hard-hitting tornadoes or disasters that happen in Tennessee, so they're probably not taking it very seriously. But obviously they should have. But they ended up being okay, so that's good. I also really liked the video where the guy rode around on the bike to show all of the damage the tornado had done. I thought it was, I mean, the path of tornadoes is so weird. Like, in the video it showed a house completely destroyed and the one next to it was fine. It's just weird the path that they take and the damage that can be done just by going through. And then lastly, the earthquakes. Obviously, the Haiti one is a very popular one that's known, and hundreds of thousands of people had died. I think I remember experiencing one here, just a little rumble, I remember. But I guess the experience I've had is seeing Renee Hernandez. She showed her experience in Nepal and seeing her pictures and everything. I think that our infrastructure in the United States and first world countries are so much better than the third world countries that we kind of don't really realize the damage that can be done, but their buildings aren't made to withstand things like that. So when there is an earthquake, it's very devastating and the buildings basically have no chance. And so it's really sad that their hospitals were completely destroyed and they basically had to go in the streets and help themselves. They didn't have any professionals to help them. I think that this can kind of be related to the corona. I like the questions that were asked about how this relates. I think that we can always be more prepared. Obviously, with this coronavirus, we knew it was coming. Didn't really do much about it. I think the same is done with all these natural disasters. Really, the one that you can't, I mean, you can always prepare. Tornadoes, you kind of have a warning. Hurricanes, you kind of have a warning to evacuate. Obviously, it varies with how severe the storm is, how fast it's moving. But we can always be prepared. You can always do something to be ready for these types of situations. And I feel like we should have learned by now to prepare better, but sadly, I don't think that's the case. And now with this disease, it really shows that we need help and we need to be, I don't know, more on top of things in the future. And hopefully we learn from this. But I don't think that we will, showing past experiences with everything else. I know for me, obviously, it's taught me not to take things for granted and how we can do things better in the future. But yeah, that's about it. I thought it was a really good presentation. I guess I didn't really, I mean, when you think of natural disasters, public health isn't really the first thing you think of, but they do affect it so much. So it was really good to hear about it. So